It's not every day that we discover an Old English manuscript, so it was an exciting moment around the Old English community when Elisabetta Magnanti and Mark Faulkner, whom you may remember from his interview on this channel, discovered that an obscure Italian manuscript of Bede's ecclesiastical history actually contains a copy of Cædmon's hymn, one of the oldest surviving poems, if not the oldest, in the English language. This discovery does not overturn our understanding of the poem, but it does disprove a few small theories that we had, which are worth discussing. And since it's such an important part of English literary history, I thought what better time to sit down with you today, read the poem, talk about what it means, the new discovery, and why it's important. Stay tuned. Okay, this is the manuscript. It's got a nice long Italian name, Roma Biblioteca Nazionale Centrale Vittorio Emanuele, 1452. Folio 122 verso is what we're currently looking at, which in philology speak is this page of this manuscript. This is primarily a Latin manuscript of one of the works of the Venerable Bede, the ecclesiastical history of the English people, that being a long and semi-biblical history of England, the English people, the church in England, etc. At one point in that history, Bede discusses the poet Cædmon, who is an illiterate cowherd who can't sing, and that's important because at parties, everyone goes around and sings a song, and Cædmon, who can't sing, always has to leave in shame. One night, Bede tells us, as he leaves a party, he goes to watch the flock for the night, falls asleep, and in sleep is visited by some sort of figure. That figure tells him, "Cædmon, sing me something." Cædmon says, "I don't know how to sing." The figure says, "Don't care, sing me something." Cædmon says, "What should I sing about?" The figure says, "Sing about creation." And so Cædmon miraculously begins to sing a song that he had never heard before. Bede gives us the sense of this poem in Latin, but other scribes have copied it into the margins, into different manuscripts in Old English. So we have many, many copies of the Old English version of the poem. It's not a very long poem, so why don't we read it today? Here's a zoomed in look at the Old English text. As you can see, most of the manuscript is in Latin, and this is the last sentence in Latin before the scribe wrote the Old English version. This says, "Quod numquam audierat, quorum iste est sensus," referring to the fact that Cædmon had never heard this song before, numquam audierat, and then Bede says, "This is the sense, iste est sensus." Again, Bede gives it in Latin, and some other scribe here has written it in Old English. And it begins, "Nu we shulon heria." Now we must sing. This word heria, written here in Northumbrian as herian, means also to praise. Whom should we praise? Heaven richas ward, the guardian of the kingdom of heaven, that is God. So now we should praise the guardian of the kingdom of heaven. We continue, metodas machta und his mod yethonk. So the machta of the method, the might of the measurer is how we might translate that. Und his, and his, mod yethonk, the thought of his mind, so like his plans, probably referring to divine providence. It continues, werk wuldur fadur, the work of the Father of glory. What work? Swa he wundra yichwas, eci drichten, or astalde. Swa literally means so, but here probably more like insofar as. He means he, but then the verb is pretty far down. He astalde, he established. The or, the origin, so sort of he created. The or, Jehoas wundra, of every wonder. Eci drichten, the eternal Lord. So we are praising the work of the Father of glory, specifically that he established the origin of every wonder, that is, he created every wonderful thing. And in the middle of all that, we call him Eci drichten, the eternal Lord, because that's what he is. So let's go over what we've read so far. Nu we shulon heria, now we have to sing, now we must praise. Heaven richas ward, the guardian of the kingdom of heaven. Metodas machta, the might of the measurer. Und his mod yethonk, and his providence. Werk wuldur fadur, the work of the glory Father. Swa he wundra jehoas eci drichten or astalde, as he, the eternal Lord, established the beginning of all of the wonders. Those are the things that we are praising and or singing about. Now we move on to the creation part. he erst schop, he first made, erdu barnum, for the children of the earth, heaven to, heaven as what? Rove, a roof. So he made heaven as a roof for the children of the earth, that is, humanity. Hali Shepend, the holy creator. So we'll go over that sentence one more time. He erst schop, erdu barnum, heaven to rove, hali Shepend. He first made for the children barnum, of earth, erdu, heaven to rove, heaven as a roof, hali Shepend, the holy creator. Tha, then, middenjard, middle earth, or Midgard, basically the world. Mon kinnis ward, the guardian of mankind. Eci drichten, the eternal Lord. So here's the second time we've called him that, Eci drichten. And then we get after tiade. Tiade is what he does to middenjard, and that is sort of furnished, prepared, made for. So he tiade middenjard, he sort of prepared Middle Earth, or he made Earth, for whom? For the firum on foldu, for the people on the earth, or people in the world. And then we describe him one more time, Fra Allmächtig, the Lord Almighty. So just to go over that last one again. Tha middenjard, monkinnisward, eci drichten, after tiade, firum on foldu, Fra Allmächtig. So then, the Ward monkinnis, the guardian of mankind, who is also the eci drichten, the eternal Lord, after tiade middenjard, he literally after furnished Middle Earth, which we can understand to mean then he sort of created the world. Firum on folu, for the people in the earth, Fra Allmächtig, the Lord Almighty. So that's Cædmon's hymn. It's a really, really important text in Old English poetic history because it's probably one of the first, if not the first, example of a Christian poet using pagan terminology to describe God. That is, there is already a rich tradition of Old English poetry by the time Christianity arrives in England. Poems like Widsith might actually be older than Cædmon's hymn, and if they are probably composed by pagans. Christians like Cædmon thought it would be a good idea to repurpose all of this poetic vocabulary and use it for Christianity. Case in point, we really associate things like Midgard with Norse mythology. It's clearly a part of the sort of pagan Germanic worldview. But here, Cædmon has no problem saying God made middenjard for us. And when he calls God things like monkinnisward, that's Thor's whole thing. We don't have Old English pagan poetry explicitly saying Thor is the monkinnisward, but we know from Norse sources that that was his role, to be the guardian and ally of mankind. So it's pretty plausible that this was a formulaic expression to describe either Thor or maybe another pagan god in older poetry, and Cædmon here repurposes it for the Christian God. So that's the Old English text of Cædmon's hymn in the version that we just found, which is probably the third oldest version that we now have. That is, there are two older ones. The actual poet Cædmon probably composed his hymn somewhere towards the end of the 7th century before he died in 684. Our oldest version of the hymn dates from around the middle of the 8th century, so less than 100 years after Cædmon's death. And this version dates from the beginning of the 9th century, so probably around 150 years after the poem was originally composed. There are three ways that this new version updates our knowledge on the poem, and as I said, this proves a few theories that we had about it. Firstly, this second word here, we, meaning we, does not appear in the earlier two manuscripts. There are other manuscripts that have it, but they come much later. What this does for us as scholars is gives us a really early argument that this shulon heria, must praise, refers to us. We must praise. In versions where the way is omitted, it's theoretically possible that the poet could have intended all of these things to be the ones doing the praise. I've always thought that that was kind of far-fetched, but because we don't see we being specified until very late manuscripts, there was the possibility that that was true. Now, given how early this manuscript is, it seems really unlikely that the poet intended it to be anything other than just we must. Another thing worth discussing, which Magnanti and Faulkner talk about extensively in their article, I'll have that linked in the description, is that this says eordu barnum. It does not say alda barnum, which is what the older two versions have. It's a pretty slight difference. Alda barnum means the children of men, and eordu barnum means the children of the earth. But we used to think that this eordu barnum version is a really late corruption of the poem. The earliest other manuscript that we have that reads this way is from the early 12th century. This is around 300 years older than that, meaning that that scribe whoever they were, is now exonerated of all charges that were previously leveled against them of sort of ruining this part of the poem. It's a really old corruption. It might actually be the original reading. This is a pretty old manuscript. It's not that far off from the actual poem, only about 150 years. We should probably still assume that Aldebardunum is the original reading, because those other manuscripts are for sure older than this one. But it's still pretty cool to see how early this corruption begins to take place. This is kind of a trifle, but this on here in Firum on Foldu is unique. That is, in other versions, it just says Firum Foldu or Firum Foldon, meaning the people of the earth, as opposed to the people on the earth. These little details are interesting to us philology nerds, but they are kind of insignificant. The big takeaway we only get when we take a step back and look at the full manuscript. We have earlier manuscripts that have Cædmon's hymn in Old English, but what these manuscripts have in common is that the Old English part is a gloss, it's marginalia. That is, the important part is the Latin. The Old English is sort of off to the side, it's just there as a reference, but not here. Here it is right there in the middle of the manuscript, copied by the same hand of the same scribe. Whoever was copying this manuscript clearly thought that the Old English text was important and worth including. That's really special in medieval manuscripts. Everyone speaks their own language, but Latin is the language, right? It's the important one. It's the one that you write everything in. And that's true for basically everywhere in Western Europe, except England. This is the beginning of the 9th century. Already we're seeing an English text being afforded the same level of honor as its Latin counterpart. If I were to talk about this for as long as I really wanted to, this would be an hour-long video, so I'll kind of cap it at that. I just can't stress enough how cool it is, as Old English scholars, to have Old English that is so old. The early medieval English were huge pioneers for the literary use, this sort of respectful treatment of their vernacular language. Alright, I'll stop gushing about this. I hope you enjoyed the video. Super cool that we've got an Old English manuscript discovery in 2026. Who would have thought? If you like this kind of content, be sure to check out the rest of the channel. Kindly consider subscribing or becoming a supporter on Patreon. And until next time, Fara Fiei Yasunde.